I would like to call this Metro.
Dell.
Here.
You do have quorum.
Okay, having a quorum, we will continue on with the meeting. First item on the agenda is to consider approval of the minutes of the regular Metropolitan Area Planning Commission meeting of September 17, 2018. If you've all had a chance to look at those, I will entertain a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries. The next item on the agenda is zoning. Consider a rezoning for property described as lots 1 and 2, block 13, Rock Island Heights Edition, and lots 6 through 10, block 17, Southern Heights Edition, or Second Edition, located at 301 East Iowa, from R2 Residential Single Family District to R7 Residential Multifamily District. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome tonight, Commissioners. This item's back to us. We studied it, but staff made an error and did not get it published in the newspaper, and that's why it's back. All of the publication and notification requirements have been satisfied. What's the slide in front of you is a snapshot out of the comprehensive plan that we just adopted in 2015. And the reason I show you this because the area that we're working on this evening here is in Southern Heights. And you see that hatching there, and what that means is a redeveloping neighborhood. And there's the definition of it. And the purpose of the redeveloping neighborhood is for special reinvestment efforts in order to correct a pattern of disinvestment. So I'll paraphrase that. So that's our comprehensive plan shows this to be a redeveloping neighborhood. This is the site that's being considered for rezoning. It currently is zoned R2. The applicant is seeking R7 multifamily. If it's approved, the building on the south, there's two buildings here. This one right here will be remodeled into a transitional women's facility, into a boarding house. And what that means is there can be 12 women there. And it's my understanding one of them will be what Forgotten Ministries calls a house. So there could be a total of 11 women there. When we look at rezonings, we want to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to support the higher zoning. My engineering department looked at water, sewer, and road and confirmed that those are all there. Are there any questions for staff? If not, we do have some people signed up that want to speak on this item. Person is Sharita Alatori.
I'm Sharita Alatori. I stay at 302 East Ohio. I stay directly behind this facility that they're trying to rezone. I'm sorry, I'm sick today. I don't approve of this. I wish this wasn't happening. I don't believe that it should be there. I don't believe the rezoning makes sense to me. I feel like, or I know that, I'm sorry, I looked up something. If my husband didn't turn off the phone. All right, well, anyway, I guess the point of rezoning is just to make sure that it's safe and it makes sense for the area and that it's not going to influence the people that's around it in a negative way. I do believe this will influence us in a negative way. He sent out a letter not too long ago, and he was stating all the things that he was going to do and what his interests were and things like that. And he stated that he didn't want to build a fence. He's not going to build this type of fence, that type of, like, it just, he doesn't want to compromise whatsoever. It seems like to me, at the very least, if this will be passed, I feel like there needs to be a fence there, a privacy fence. I'm not saying it needs to be a 20-foot fence. If you guys could please, push that or make that, if this is going to go any further and it's pushed, please make sure there's a fence. And I just don't agree. I'm sorry. I don't feel good enough to sit up here and talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Valentin Alatorre.
My name is Valentin Alatorre. I live in 302 East Ohio. I oppose this rezoning because it's literally 15 feet from property line to my wife's and I's house. It does appear that he don't want to do anything else except for the plans that he wants to do. We totally disagree what he wants to rezone, because there's plenty of places in Enid already that's already ready to go. Rezone, we don't even have to be here. And to my knowledge, my facts, he already has a place that he owns that's already rezoned, it's ready to go. Also, I like to say the R7 is unlimited amount of people that he can put in there. Now, on the current dwelling, he can only put 12 people. That is correct. But once it's rezoned, it could be, obviously everybody knows that, there's unlimited of people that he can put. He can knock it down, build an apartment complex, or who knows what else he could do. Not to mention the old church that's right next to the building that he wants to do. On the other meetings, he already said the plans he wants to do. I mean, he could, so the 12 people is really misleading. He can obviously put more than 12 people, but once again, at the current dwelling, it's only 12. And that needs to be pretty clear. Also, it's 215 feet away from a park that's owned from the city of Enid, 170 feet from property line to a daycare. Now, I don't know all the laws that prohibit stuff like that, what he's trying to do to open up. They may not be, but, you know, there's a lot of loopholes and all types of stuff, including taxes and stuff, you know. But it's really disturbing what he's doing. All the windows are also facing our property. So, I mean, it makes me feel really uncomfortable that I can see everything that's going on. I mean, it seems like it's going to invade our privacy of our daily life. Yes, I'm used to living kind of a loner, and I got used to that. And I plan to continue the way I'm living. And I'm not against anybody building, redeveloping the community, but in the right way, in the right path, not the path that this seems like it's going. We should need to go in another direction. And the direction right here for rezoning to R7, it's not the right direction, in my opinion. I strongly feel that way, my wife and I. Also, there would be other people, more people that would be defending me. However, there is not that many houses. There's only lots. So these people, most of the people are just landowners. My family is pretty much the only family that actually live in the house. The other houses are nobody's living in there. So I mean, in order for me to have a petition within 150 feet or 300 feet like it was last time and make it look all, oh, nobody's against it. Yeah, but they're just landowners, you know? So in order for me to have people to be against it, it would be almost impossible. It's possible, but it's almost impossible to have a petition that looks nice and great, because all of them are empty. And I would have to chase the owners down and all this. I do have, thankfully, I do have an attorney that's defending us, but he's also defending himself as well. He's volunteering pretty much. And I do believe that everything happens for a reason. It's just a coincidence that he's an attorney. I mean, that's how convenient is that. Other than that, also there's a back door on that existing building that's measures exactly 100 feet from door to my back door. So just want to throw that out as well. Other than that, does anybody have any questions for my family, Ryan? Okay, thank you.
Attorney Ronald Kelly.
Good evening to the Planning Commission and staff. And I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, but I'm not an outsider, as some have said. I was born and raised here in Enid, Oklahoma. I still have interests in Southern Heights community. I also speak on behalf of representing the last property owner and several other members as citizens that own property in Southern Heights and encompasses the mapped area. I want to say this, that I think that it's appropriate because the way some of this information has been misstated. I am not here to test my faith, and I'm not here to test anybody else's faith or their religion. I'm here to speak about the legal issues, the boundaries, the job and the duties of the Planning Commission under the state statute, and to determine what's been fair and what has been the process as of this date. I tried that the last meeting, and we were basically ignored until City Council's legal attorney, their attorney, realized otherwise. And I think that as I stand here today, just what has been already told to you is a little misleading. We know for a fact, based on city documents, that this project has already been remodeled, that the application was made to the city of Enid, and the application for construction was made on May the 21st, 2018. And every listed project in reference to work orders, from electrical to plumbing, has been completed with permits given by the city of Enid. So in September, before the city council, this project was pictured at the study session, the before and the after, which means that it was done. And when we requested the documents to verify the work orders and the permits, it justified exactly that everything had been done, knowing that this project had not been rezoned, knowing at the time that the permits and the application was granted, that the purpose for the project was to allow the owner to operate a transitional women living center. And so I just wanted to clear that up as to why and why did that occur before the rezoning issues was presented to this body, which is one of the legislative bodies of this city, and then to the city council. Now, in reference to the reinvestment of a community, I searched long and hard. I may have overlooked it, but I did not find Southern Heights being specifically identified as a major component of the comprehensive plan in reference to redevelopment and recommendations of projects, except in the prior envision plan that they had identified certain parts of Southern Heights, which was the school, in reference to housing projects as it relates to CDBG grant money. So there's no way that one could prove that a transitional living center is a reinvestment into a community. So the other information in reference to this transitional living center is, by statute, there's some very clear boundaries that identifies a transitional living center. And all I've been told, everything that's been stated in reference to this is that this is a transitional living center, has no contracts with the Department of Corrections. But why would it be a boarding house now? The original notification that was sent out was a transitional living center. And there's a major difference between a transitional living center and a women's boarding house. And if you're going to identify the comprehensive plan in reference to their recommendations, the comprehensive plan said that Enid has a large parcels of retail empty space, and that those spaces could be easily used for mixed-use housing, multifamily housing. And it's kind of ironic that the 580 Coffee House, that this city granted a permit for a remodel for the first floor and the second floor, and the second floor was identified to be for transitional housing, for boarding, for dormitory, and it's downtown on East Randolph. Clearly, if this is only going to be for 11 women, why wouldn't that already be a facility that would accommodate those purposes? How many transitional programs does Southern Heights have to buy in or have to accept? The same commission and the council, a year, 2 years before, granted almost the same thing on 4th Street, which was a men's and women's housing facility. And it's ironic again that it turns out to be that when that was ultimately requested on the PUD, that it was to house 12 individuals. So just less than a mile approximately from this requested location, this same organization, without any notice, because it came up under a request as a church, that ultimately turned out to be a housing facility and was promoted in the newspaper, that a contract with the Department of Corrections. And so that already exists. So that's two. And is there a need for a third? And if it is, why does it have to be in our backyard? And when I say in our backyard, some people take that as if like it's some type of little joke about the interest and the concern or disconcern for social issues. That's not the case. It is not the case at all. You know, I've sat and listened to this argument about these women who are prostitutes or who are coming out of prostitution or have been faced with prostitution, that they're subject to go out and sell their bodies for this, that, and the other. Well, I would wonder why in the comprehensive plan or any other plan that the city of Enid has addressed in reference to social concerns, economic concerns, housing concerns, and especially this great police department that you have here, that there is no statistical information that has been presented to anyone to use as a basis of justification to say that this is necessary. And that where does it exist? Does it exist on the west side of Enid? Does it exist on any other part of this city? But there's no arrest reports that you'll find in Southern Heights for no prostitution, or no one that's been identified as being homeless because of prostitution. And I would be concerned also about the fact that what has been labeled as the restrictions. It's as stated that a boarding house, in every definition of a boarding house, it is someone who pays to eat and sleep, which is going to come up under the Department of Health. But boarding house, that's not just someone who's just homeless. No visitors for 30 days, no vehicles, strict rules and policies, routine drug and alcohol testing, but no credentials of anyone that is qualified under the Department of Corrections, under the statute as it relates to mental health, the mental health statutes. This is just a list of what we're going to do to somebody, which is more or less a lockdown. And a lockdown is pretty synonymous with some form of incarceration. My clients, myself, we're only asking that this commission adhere to the comprehensive plan as it relates to those issues that the commission is vested with in reference to the relationship of the community, in relationship to the rezoning, if it's consistent with this comprehensive plan, the impact that it has upon the citizens who are directly and immediately affected from the applicant's plans, and the fairness as it relates to this whole paradigm and the damage and the injury that it has to somebody else's property. Is this something that just benefits one individual, whatever the dream may be, whatever the like may be, as opposed to what is for the community as a whole? No realtor will tell you that transitional living, boarding houses, increases the value of anyone's property. No place. And I just think that between a transitional facility that's on Randolph, a transitional facility that's on 4th Street, all the other facilities that this city has and has recognized in reference to treating and providing care for individuals who are going through challenges of life, through all the different homes that are integrated in communities that provide safe havens for individuals? Why do we have to come to 301 East Iowa and do a rezoning, which is literally nothing but a spot rezoning? And then do you come to the point where the person across the street wants to rezone for something else? That's not the purpose of rezoning and the comprehensive plan. And so I just simply ask that, in reference to the totality of these issues, that those matters be taken seriously into concern as you go forward in reference to this. And we strictly oppose the application. I think that there's also another issue in reference to notification. As I stated, I haven't seen a reapplication or an amended application, but the notice comes out that it's a transitional living center for women, boarding house to house 12 people on the south end of the church. Well, let's be straight. The project has been built out, which is clearly not the way the process is supposed to be. And at this point in time, we would just ask that these matters be taken into serious concern as it relates to going forward. Thank you.
You, sir?
Barbara Finley.
Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Finley. I live at 401 East Indiana, but I also have probably a total of 4 pieces of property that is in this involved area within the 300 feet. I think I'm speaking for all of them since I own all of them. So you can just count me as 4 people up here giving all of them's opinions since they belong to me. But anyway, I don't want to say what I said before when I came in, so I made some other notes to myself so that I could bring them to your attention. But when I look at multifamily homes, I really was able to identify 2 that's in that area. Other than that, it seems like it's single-family homes. And both of the places that I saw, one side of them is Orrin K. Garrett, and the other side is State Street. So I didn't really find like apartment houses off in that area or multi. It seems like it's single family. And so I am against changing the zoning from single home to multifamily district because it changes the character of the neighborhood. And for the requesting party, it's changing it for the requesting party only. And it affects those presently that are already maintaining single-family homes and that their property is close enough to touch the lines or be within a perimeter that's no greater than what the city requires of this 15 feet or something like that, in that they have a right-of-way. But I believe a character change of a neighborhood should truly have proper spaces and boundaries. I'm not against like apartments coming off in there to be rented, but I think it needs to be set up just as it is out there by the new Walmart. They got a whole complex out there that has apartments in it, but it's not encroaching on anybody's singular home. And so I believe if those kind of changes take place in my neighborhood, it would be more than welcome in the right spot. Certainly business opportunities and revisiting the redevelopment of the area. But I don't believe that if you really planned it, you would just put any one thing in the back door of any one person, but you would create the opportunities just like they do business district or business parks. So I just don't condone the displacement or the imposing of the impact on the single-family neighborhood. If it's properly planned, I've been around a lot of places, but I don't just see apartments right next to singular homes. And even if they do kind of do that, they usually got somebody in there that's buying up all of that property, and then it ends up no singular homes. And then it just becomes an apartment district. And that's not what we're looking for those of us that are investing in our land. And when you're doing putting in apartments or housing or programs, then of course you're concerned about the noise, the traffic, the density, and those kind of issues and more. I believe that when a zoning change occurs, it should benefit more than one individual who starts the process. And we've had our lessons that it doesn't get started in this city until one person at least, one landowner, asks for it. And then it starts a process of changing. But I don't believe that if you don't want to encroach on single-family homes or in their back doors, you should be going for blocks. And we got blocks down there that can be something done. Although I understand the economics of using a building that's already there, like that church is, or like that home is, and trying to convert it, but it's still it's a big difference in living in it versus coming to classes. You know, we all go to the churches and there's multi-classrooms and things like that, and then everybody goes back to their own home. But this kind of setting is where will be making a final decision that this transitional up to 12 people in it can be right next door to the neighborhood that is set up for a mother and a father and their children. Maybe even grandma or mother-in-law, something like that. But I don't believe that the zoning process should be used to just do for 150 feet. And then anybody else wants something, they have to come and then ask for some kind of zoning for another 50 feet. It just, if you're planning, like our major plans are for this city, it should be looking at it in a bigger and a better way than that. Now, it's stated that a 5-bed home could go in at this site without a zoning change. And it's also been stated that it is going to be impossible for Forgotten Ministry to financially sustain this program with a house mother living on site with less than 11. Those are facts put out by the proponents of this situation. Yet also stated there is no plans to start with all 11 women at first. And they want to move slowly, and the community feels safe as they bring in 3 to 4 to 6 until they get to 11, and that the community feels comfortable with them getting to that level. My question is, what is the real truth? What is the rush for a zoning change if you can already start with 5? The fact is, a zoning change means capacity is approved. You don't partially approve it. It is fully approved. And so the fact is that you could admit 5 women without a zoning change. And the fact is, it's not economical feasible to do that without the 11 women and a house mother. So although we are told we want the community to feel safe when more residents are added up to that capacity, the fact is there is no outside regulatory monitoring agency for the community or the neighbors to assure the safe rate of adding climates or even any problems that occur. Because that's just not the way it's set up. It's not up under DLC. Nobody. Once you pass it, they get to do whatever the law allows them, and that is go up to 12. You are not passing it, that y'all have to wait and do 3 and come back to me, and then do 6 and come back to me and prove it. You're just giving them the license to go there. So The people, and I've heard them say that they have community members, will be setting on like an admission committee to review who gets in. But I know all of you have worked with boards and been in organizations, and you know where your loyalty ends up. If they have you on your board, on their board, you're going to be loyal to them. You're not loyal to the community and taking care of the community problem. Your job is to interview and see if this is a person that can come in this. And I think everybody that's been in business, if you know you have a financial concern from the beginning, you better take care of the finances or it's not going to work anyway. So the goal would be to fill it up. That's why you're asking for 12 and putting a person in there to monitor it. And we can't forget or ignore that Forgotten Ministries' goal is to have 11 and a house mother with the responsibility for 11 women. Now, I don't know if any of you all have been involved with kids and whatever. They don't let you get to them kind of ratios to try to monitor anybody. And people with problems like prostitution or not knowing how to be a good mother and all of those kind of things, these are not angels already trained to take, you know what I mean, to just come right in. They are having to live this for a period of time to move to a new level. So this I see as a big responsibility for a house mother to handle 11 people through the process of this change. The house mother, in their own words, is the security blanket with duties of monitoring adherence to strict rules and policies, attendances to classes, and other rules that they have. So Forgotten Ministry is their own letters have time and time again that say they would see women having to do horrendous things to survive. And so these are people with some experience about survival. It may not be good, it may not be what we want for them, but they know how to work systems too. So resorting to selling their bodies just to survive or not having skills to care for their children, it doesn't make you want to have that really as your neighbor or somebody, as they said, looking out the window at their children and things like that. So I'm just saying it's not just, I don't want it in my back door because I really do want my neighborhood developed, but I want it economically, and we want to be a part of that economic plan, and we want it planned out, and we want resources to come to all of us there who have an interest. And sometimes I have to get personal, and I'm going to give you just one. I have one person, a family that lives away from here and was having problems getting their lawns cut, their blocks cut, their lots cut. And so I've been communicating with them, and they were angry that they had this almost, I think it was $242 charge that their lot was cut for them by the city. And they said, we just cut it, but I can't prove anything. They said they just had to cut it, so I just got a $242 lien against my property. And so I said, okay, I'll help you with your property. I'll see that it gets cut. And so the money was exchanged to get the city out of it, pay you what you charged them. They're going to quit arguing with you, and I'm taking care of it. And of course, the people tell me, well, it may be some hidden charges, so you better go over there to that city and find out if it is. I went to find out. They said, no, there's no more hidden charges, but by the 1st, we'll be back out there again. And I said, hold up. I'm going to now be responsible to take care of that. And I've already met the responsibility from the letter you sent out. So I know it's cut. So I don't want to challenge like you gave the family before, that you just had to cut it, and they had just cut it. So I'm responsible for it now. And then the next thing that said to me, and you guys need to really listen to this, the next thing that was said to me was, you know you can't do nothing with those lots. Now I'm talking to you in the voice that they talk to me. You know you can't do nothing with it. Like, why are you out there going to cut that lot? Why are you going to do it? I mean, this is a wrong attitude.
We have no
to
control
make
over
me.
code enforcement.
Excuse me?
Ma'am,
We have no control.
I don't know. Don't answer for them. I'm
okay.
telling you.
But you are off the subject right now, ma'am.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm talking about doing things in our neighborhood and everybody being able to do it equally.
No one on this panel has any control.
It's still part of the story that I'm trying to tell you.
Volunteer, not a paid employee of the city.
See, we always face this. This is the biggest problem that we have, that is never anybody's business. But you got to know the circumstances in which, when we try to improve our community, the obstacles that we run into. And this is real, and this is this week. And so for you to tell me that you can sit there and approve anything coming in my neighborhood, and you don't even want to hear the problems that we face to take care of our neighborhood. But anyway, I'm against this for that reason and the one I just told you, and y'all's actions.
Jeremiah Heron.
All right, thank you, guys. I'm going to make it short. I was sitting here thinking about everything that everyone's been saying, and I remember the first time I ever seen a woman that was a victim. And it was when me and my wife started the ministry out in Los Angeles. We were out there on the streets, and we worked with a lot of different types of people. There was one lady in particular. She was an elderly lady that was in a wheelchair, and I remember one night pushing her from shelter to shelter, trying to find a place for her to stay for the night. And every shelter we ended up going to, they kept on denying this lady access into a bed to live in. And finally, it got so frustrating that I went into one of the women's shelters with them and said, hey, what's going on? Why can't this elderly lady stay here? And they said, because she won't give up her pipe. And I mean, what do you mean her pipe? And she pulled out this lead pipe that was underneath her seat that she used during the day to protect herself. And it was like, okay, first off, I've never had to carry a lead pipe around with me when I'm walking around. But it was like she's having to do that because she has been a victim to crimes that was out of her, that she couldn't control. And, we hear a lot about the type of women and who's coming in. And, we have addressed those issues over and over again. And these are women that are victims of crimes that need some time to get on their feet. They are mothers. They have kids, they have husbands, and since the last meeting, we've had the privilege of being able to have some extra time to be able to go out into the neighborhoods. We were able to set up something with the city to have a town hall meeting to answer any questions that the city or the community might have. We were able to answer questions about the rezoning and why we were going through that process again. It was really neat because in that meeting, we had about a 90% approval rating of the transitional housing that's wanting to come into the neighborhood. The only reason that we are going through this process is because when we went to Chris, we wanted to do this the best way that we could for the neighborhood. And some of the concerns have been about us starting the renovation. The renovation has started because we can already have a transitional housing in the neighborhood with 5 women. The rezoning allows us to move the number up so that we're now able to provide funding for a house supervisor, which allows for her to monitor, keep the women on track on making sure they're getting to their jobs, making sure they're getting to the classes that they need to help get the skills that they need to become successful citizens as they re-enter back into society. And so we have sent out the letter to all the community within the quarter-mile radius that explains the rezoning process and the program in detail of the things that it won't be and the things that it will be. And so since then, we've had a lot more people that have thought it was something else, now understand what the program is, now feel way more comfortable with the rezoning taking place. And so so we're here today, obviously, because we're starting the process again. Do you guys have any questions for me in regard to anything that's been said? Yes, sir.
The people donated this property to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
They knew what you did?
Yes, sir. Indian Baptist Church, Linda's actually here. She donated it with us, and we had a partnership with her as we move forward with what the housing would be used for. And so their heart has been for many years when the church was open is that they wanted to use this facility for a housing program for women to help them get onto their feet.
And this property, before you owned it, was a church property?
So the building to the north was the actual church hall where they had church services. And then the building to the south, which we're renovating now, was like a fellowship hall with several different classrooms in it. So it was an easy renovation as far as layout because we had the bigger room for their classrooms in the kitchen and the classrooms for their bedrooms.
So maybe should have been rezoned a long time ago.
Probably, yes.
Quick question.
Yes.
On the economics, what triggers the fact that if you get more than 5, here comes more money? Where does that come from? How does that, in a nutshell, how does that work?
So the women, they pay program fees. The same with our men's housing down the street. They pay a $300 a month program fee, and it helps to cover their housing and their transportation, food, and different things. And so obviously a house supervisor has to get paid. And so to be able to have a few extra numbers in there helps us to be able to help support her and to be able to help pour money into the ministry to help the ladies.
And to reaffirm from what you told us last time, these are nonviolent and non-sex related crimes.
Yes,
right?
sir. Yeah, and some of them, most of the men that are in our program aren't even from prison. They're actually from the streets. And so they're people that have lost jobs. They're in a time of transition. They want to get back on their feet. But the ones that are coming from prison or have a record, there's no violent crime offenders. There's no sex offenders. They have to go through an application and a interview board, which Ms. Finley's talking about, is that interview board is made up from people from the community so that we let the community have a say of who's coming in or out, because we want them to feel comfortable with the ladies that are being approved to move into that. There has been a lot of say about the daycare and the park. Again, the ladies can live right next to any daycare, right next to any park, and actually the daycare owner is very for the actual project.
Yeah, there's nothing that would keep them from just renting a house.
They can rent a house. We could build another house next to that and another house next to that and another house next to that and put 5 women, 5 women, 5 women, because there's nothing, I mean, they're just women that are looking for some time to get on their feet.
We're not against people living in We're here for rezones.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Summer Parish.
Summer Parish, 2829 South Garland. I am the committee chair for the working committee for this home. When I heard about the refuge at the well, I heard it at church, and Pastor Wade Burleson announced it. And quite honestly, I almost couldn't keep myself in my chair because I just wanted to jump up and tell Wade, I want to help. I'm sorry. I have been in a position where I've been nearly homeless myself. And I fortunately had a home to go to, parents that could take me in and my son. And when I went through that, I knew that I wanted to help other women that didn't have parents or family that would take them in. It's easier than you think to get yourself in that place. My husband has a Sunday school class or a community group at Emmanuel Baptist Church, and it's specifically for men that are recently out of prison. He goes to a couple of different transitional homes every week to pick up men for Sunday school class, and men come from the Oasis. These men want nothing more than to change and have better lives. They don't want drama. They don't want trouble. That's probably their biggest concern is, they don't want to be living next to somebody that's going to be causing trouble and drama also. That's what they want to stay away from. These men are good men and love the Lord. A couple of weeks ago, we had a man living in a transitional home that had led a man that's actually still in prison to Christ, and he baptized him. One of the pastors had to wrap his ankle monitor so he could get in the water and baptize another person. How awesome is that? These people don't want trouble. They're not out to make trouble for the neighborhood. And this church and this home were already there, and they look, what's been done to them has made them look nicer, and it looks nice, and I don't really know. I'm sorry, I'm a little worked up, but I've got a cousin that was released out of the Fairview County Jail, and she said, they won't let me go until I have a place to live. Where can I go? We started getting on the phones looking for a place for her to live, and there wasn't a place for her to go. The best place for her would have been a home like this. And I think this is a great thing. It's an answer to my prayers, and I think it needs to happen.
Thank you.
Justin Parrish.
Good evening. You know, we hear we can't change other people. And that's.
I would have liked to have you state your name so that it would.
Justin Parrish, 2829 South Garland Road. I need a taller podium next time. Look, we get involved with our family members, our friends, co-workers, anybody you know. We think, man, if I could just change them. We can't change them. But what we can do is we can give them the tools to get this work done. You can't have a good mechanic without tools. You can't fix something if you're a good mechanic without tools. And, there's people that need to fix their lives, and there's a lot of people that want to. And people that come through these types of situations, they absolutely are looking for a fix. It takes a real commitment to go into a program like this. Now, while myself, I haven't ever been in a program like that, as my wife stated, I work with these guys, and I'm seeing them. Listen, I work with them at Luckenbill's that are living in similar situations, and there's a shortage of women's homes like this here in town. We need a ton more of them, to be honest with you. We're a big enough city. We should have several of them. And, while we can't change others, we can give them the tools to make that change if they're willing. And if they're going to make a commitment and follow through with that commitment. And that's what it takes to go through one of these programs. It's a high-structured program. It's geared at success. If they're not for the program, they'll weed themselves out. We've already heard of nonviolent offenders. Don't need to repeat all that. But they also say don't enable people. But this is the kind of good enabling, because you would enable some people to be housed in a structured environment and make a change and become contributing members and productive members, not only of society, but of our great city. Please approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's all that signed up.
May I redirect some questions back to Jeremiah? If you don't mind. What state of repair was this property in before you started on it?
The city probably would have moved to condemn it at some point. It was that bad.
Have we had any other members of the Southern Heights community that had suggested an alternative use for this building other than what you're doing with it?
No.
Have you had, how much community support have you had in regard to people wanting to volunteer their time and expertise for your program?
Well, we've been able to really partner with the Missionary Baptist Church, with Reverend Flynn there in the community. Their church is a big supporter of it, and they've been able to host the town hall meetings for us. We've done now 2. And so they've been able to bring the community in there to really get an understanding of what's going to happen. Derwin Norwood Sr. has been, his church is now behind it. So we've been getting the church supporters behind it. As far as like manpower, we were going to do a community project last week with painting, but we got rained out, so that fell apart, obviously. But we have, I mean, we're not even close to finishing. I know we may seem like we're almost done. We're not, believe me, we're not done. We're just at the drywalling, so we are halfway through it. We're, hopefully we'll gather more of the churches in the neighborhood to come out and help do volunteer days.
Are you open to having members of the community, neighbors, other people who are not with an organization? Are you opposed to having them come in and maybe volunteer their time with your program, maybe, life skills or,
that's kind of how our
finances or something to that effect? Or
yeah, that's kind of how our ministries ran, is through individuals that come in and help teach the classes. And so whether that's money management, whether that's Bible studies, Anthony's the directors of the Oasis, which is the men's down the street, and he has several different guys that come in from different churches, or individuals that come and are mentors, or guys that take them to dinner, or just guys that are involved in their life. And so any of the programs that we do, even our homeless shelter, we have about 30 to 40 churches that volunteer to run that. So it's kind of the way the ministry's set up and the way we function.
So these folks could live at Newview Apartments, or they could live in any house? Okay.
Anywhere they want.
You have no association with the Oklahoma Department of Corrections?
No association whatsoever.
Are you opposed to putting up some type of fencing or screening from the residential?
Absolutely not. We have no problem. In our letter, maybe that got miscommunicated, we were addressing that we are not part of DOC, and we're not putting up any like barbed wire fences with security towers. I mean, we're not an institution like that at all. But as far as like a dividing wall with the neighbor to the south, we'd have no problem with putting it up if we could sit down and figure out exactly what he would like as far as design. We want to make sure that it makes him happy.
Anything else for Mr. Herring? Thank you.
I had a question for Chris. The first gentleman that spoke, I don't know what his facts were, but we've been told this rezoning is limited to 12.
Yes.
And the first gentleman that spoke was saying that was not true. So it is limited to 12.
Yes.
The notice. Clarify that.
Right, the notice that was sent out is specifically said renovate the south existing building into a boarding house not to exceed 12 persons.
I think we'd have to have a whole site plan process and so on and so forth if he wanted to build an apartment complex. In fact, I think we had the same kind of argument with Roosevelt Apartments and some of the other ones too, so.
Okay, Commissioners, are there any other questions? If not, I'm going to call for, first of all, a motion.
Motion to approve the rezoning.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to approve. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have Carla call roll, and I would like each commissioner to either give an aye or a nay.
Whitney? Aye. Marvin?
Aye.
Eddie? Aye. David?
Aye.
Cole?
Aye.
Don?
Nay.
And Jonathan?
Aye.
That passes.
Okay, that motion carries. With that, we will move on to the next item. Give me just a second. And we'll let everybody clear out.
The county.
This is point and shoot kind of. No exaggeration. 90% of the people were in favor. The problem is in this neighborhood, most of the people are seniors. can't get out to something like this. But it was on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Somebody's ready.
Okay, let's move on to the next zoning item, which is to consider a rezoning for lots 8 and 9, Block 18, Garland Edition, located at 525 South Arthur, from R2 Residential Single Family District to C1 Light Commercial District, to be used for Da Vinci's Coffee House. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Planning Commission studied this rezoning back in 2015. And at that particular time, you did recommend approval to the Mayor and Board of Commissioners contingent that the restriction in the Garland Park of no commercial uses be lifted. And that has now occurred in the last 3 years. The applicant has gone to district court, and it has been rendered through a journal entry judgment and found that the restrictions on their property could not be used for commercial purposes is void and unenforceable, and so now we're back before you tonight. Because there was such a long period of time, people within 300 feet of this property, as you know, we notify when we do a rezoning, probably has changed in that period of time, so that's back for you. So the slide in front of you is our comprehensive plan, and right here is the corner of Garriott and Cleveland, where we have a community center. And like the previous item, right underneath there, you see that hatching again, which stands for that redeveloping neighborhood. The community center is a large commercial center that means to serve residents of the whole community, not just the neighborhood, but the whole community. And the redeveloping neighborhood is, like in the previous item, recognizing a part of our town that is for special reinvestment. And that's what those two mean. Are there any questions about that? So the rezoning is C1 light commercial so that they can provide a coffee shop that serves the area. This is the site. You see Arthur there on the west, O&K Garriott on the south. Currently, there's single-family dwelling on the property. It is the intent of the applicant to convert it into a coffee shop. Like all zoning districts, we make sure we have access to roads, water, and sewer, and in this case, we do. Are there any questions the staff can answer?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
It says here, access is going to be eliminated from O&K Garriott. So
Yes.
where's the access going to come from?
On Arthur. Be right here, sir. They'll come right here, and this Arthur does have access onto Garriott. So they'll enter the property, most likely right here. I've seen some preliminary sketches to that effect.
So what's the property to the left there? Is that commercial?
This right here?
Residential?
This right here?
Yes.
That's commercial. That's Westgate Shopping Center.
What is that?
Westgate Shopping Center.
Tokyo. To go, Tokyo.
Tokyo's right there on the corner.
How many parking slots would that accommodate?
This site,
Come in on Arthur.
we don't know until he presents his site plan.
And that would be a separate meeting.
Yes.
So like we get to approve that separately.
But the parking requirements are one for each 4 seats and one for each employee. So I don't know what those numbers are, but that'll be what's required. And then there'll be a site plan submitted that we have that required number of parking.
Chris, I'm sure that area, that shopping center is commercial something. What is it?
C3, general commercial.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I have one more item to introduce, and I failed to do that before open to questions. If you'll let me show you that. We did receive a protest, written protest on this particular rezoning. The slide here, the blue area is the area being rezoned, and the red area is owners within 300 feet protesting against it, and the protest total was 8%. The yellow properties are also in protest, but they're beyond 300 feet. So any questions about that?
Are any of those people here to speak?
I have 2 people signed up on the sheet to speak to, yes. But
Still a question on the rezoning. So we're going to rezone this, but usually in the past, when somebody wants us to rezone, don't they bring us a site plan at that time?
No, the rezoning process does not require the site plan for it to be approved or denied. But before they can develop the property, then we will do a site plan. And those did come to the commission and the planning commission. The city commission, approximately 3 to 4 years ago, delegated those duties to staff, and they no longer come back to the city commission. And that way, the city's in a position to theoretically approve a site plan any business day of the whole year, rather than just 12 times per year in front of the planning commission.
I guess I'm just stating that a lot of the rezoning we've done have already had the site plans at the same time.
If they submit one with their rezoning package, then I show that to you. In this case, they did not, and they're not required to at this level. Any other questions for staff?
I guess one of my instant concerns whenever I look at this, and having tried many times to come out of that shopping center right there, is just virtually impossible. And isn't this going to cause additional traffic right there? I mean,
we looked at it on a staff level, primarily my engineering department, and determined that it was okay. Any other questions for staff? I have. Bill Andrew.
I'm Bill Andrew. I live at 524 South Hayes, and this is an interesting spot because in the 80s I was in one of y'all's seats, and now I'm here having to talk to you guys. And so it's also interesting to learn that site plan approvals used to be required in zoning, Eddie. That has changed since I was doing this in the 80s. And I really think in this case that would probably be something that's real important because, you know, I understand the comprehensive plan. I probably read it more often than I've enjoyed reading it. And it really seemed to me that it was kind of something that was done as a guideline or something that we could kind of look at and say, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we could take some of this infrastructure that we have, and wouldn't it be nice if we could maybe reuse it in some places that may need that kind of help? But it really isn't the case in this neighborhood. You know, there's a lot of nice structures. There is a buffer between C3 commercial, and as you get a little deeper to the east in this neighborhood, it is more developed. And I read the plan, and it actually talks about the idea of hope, that maybe we could create a little walking neighborhood, and maybe we could put some businesses and such in there, that maybe it would become a better walking neighborhood. But adding additional traffic at an intersection that I live right on that street, and the traffic is backed up over 4 blocks to the east, and there's nobody that's going to enter from Arthur to Garriott, because people won't let me enter Garriott from my house on Hayes. And so I don't understand, except that the traffic's going to be redirected into the neighborhood from Arthur exit, or these people are going to have to drive west through a shopping center, private shopping center parking lot, or they're going to have to go 4 blocks out of their way to get to a controlled intersection at Garriott and Cleveland. And so it really doesn't make a lot of traffic sense. And I just am certainly concerned that if we did want to develop in a comprehensive plan in this neighborhood, wouldn't it be nice to have some theory and thought around how we're going to do it? You know, wouldn't it be nice to say, hey, here's kind of the idea of what we're going to do, except we've got one piece of property that all of a sudden we're going to say, hey, let's let that be commercial and let's just see what happens. It isn't making good sense at all. Matter of fact, we would have called this back in my day the spot zoning idea. We've got plenty of commercial properties in Enid. We don't need to take a residential property that's just so happens to be in a high-use area. Matter of fact, I thought it was kind of interesting, the complaints that didn't come a bunch of those properties within 300 feet are owned by the city of Enid. And so the city of Enid and the Nicholas people are going to wanting to develop all that thing, and we're going to add more congestion to an intersection that hasn't been improved for as long as I can remember. And there's going to be more traffic added there because we're diligently trying to make that corner that the city owns to the south of Cleveland and Garrett. It honestly, as a traffic flow issue, we don't know how he's going to park. We don't know how he's going to get these people to leave this place without driving through the neighborhood. My last point that I wanted to make sure that we talked about is zoning doesn't just go with the individual. It goes with the property. And so when you're zoning something C1, and this nice guy, I've met Nick. Nick's a good guy. I believe he has great intentions. But he's competing with the biggest coffee shop in the world right down the street. And if it doesn't work for Nick, this zoning is still there. And so I think that we need to make sure that we're making good planning decisions, not just, hey, this is a great idea, we hope it works for this fella. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And ladies.
David Keller.
Hi, David Keller. I live at 516 South Hayes. I've had a chance to go through the Envision Enid plan. That's a lot, 600, 500 and some odd pages. I agree with Bill. I see it as a guideline. It's a what if. What if we could do this? According to that document, that's the third busiest intersection in Enid. We're talking about introducing potentially a high-volume commercial retail establishment with no egress to the east on Garriott. I would assume that Mike Wright and the guys that own that shopping center don't want this traffic cutting across his parking lot, which is already an issue because of how congested that intersection is. You can't get north on Cleveland now, at least for a bit, not very far anyway, and the only way to get back to the east is to cut through our neighborhood and go, like Bill said, several blocks out of the way to get to a light. We don't need more traffic in our neighborhood. There's no commercial property from Arthur to Johnson, from Garriott to Oklahoma. If you exclude the Henson construction, which is right on the train tracks and is not really amenable to residential applications, that residential section just continues to go north and to the east, with a few exceptions. And I think probably from a planning standpoint, if you look at the few exceptions, those aren't really gold star properties that everybody's proud of for commercial development. There just doesn't seem to be a plan here. And I agree with Bill. Nick seems like a nice guy, but you guys aren't approving a coffee shop. You're approving a zoning. The world's most successful coffee chain is within walking distance of my house now. I don't need another coffee shop. There's a commercial glut, according to Envision Enid, that wouldn't eradicate itself until 2025, if I remember correctly, at current levels of commercial development. But we're going to spot zone a property on the corner of a residential neighborhood to add to the glut. There's commercial property within 200 feet of this property that's already zoned commercial and available for lease. It's been available for lease for multiple years. There's a bit of a commercial blight across Arthur, and that's because it's adjacent to a C3 zone. There's supposed to be buffers built in. That's part of planning. But to extend commercial development into our neighborhood is just going to extend the blight further into our neighborhood. And I understand the slide about development. Bill and I poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into the properties we own in that neighborhood and continue to do so. But our pocketbooks aren't going to be any match for commercial blight sneaking into our neighborhood. And then again, what if it fails? I hope it doesn't for Nick's sake. I hope he's successful in everything he does. But if it does fail, that's a tire repair shop. That's a rubber, God only knows what's made there. It's a vape shop. It's a dispensary. I don't know what goes in there. But it won't be the neighborhood-friendly coffee shop. And that zoning is forever, whether this business venture is successful or not. I have serious concerns, and I know, Chris, you said that there wasn't any concern on the part of the staff, but I think a traffic study would be a really interesting idea And I guess the other question is, could the site plan even be approved for the proposed business without exceptions? I don't really see any hardship for commercial development in town, given a lot of commercial property, so I'm assuming that the proposed business is going to fit on that space, is going to meet all requirements, is not going to create a traffic problem, although I could argue there's already a traffic problem near that intersection. This just doesn't seem like part of a comprehensive plan. So I would encourage you, when you think about it, don't think of it as a coffee shop, because that's not how Bill and I are looking at it, and the other people who opposed. We're looking at it as changing a single property in our neighborhood to commercial zoning, regardless of the success or failure of the first, second, or third business that ends up there. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's all signed up for this item.
Chris, to clarify, you said did more than 50% of the people in the area object?
No.
Can we do tire shops in C3 or C1?
I gave you some. I don't have the complete zoning there, but let me back up to my slide. I didn't list all the uses here, but it's C1 is general and professional office. Limited number of retail trade activities provide for the needs and convenience of the people in adjacent area. That's what it's for. If you allow me, I can go get my zoning and answer that question.
It could be a dispensary, though.
That I don't know, because I don't know what state of Oklahoma, what regulations they have adopted. Once that's happened, then we'll be able to look at the impact on City of Enid zoning.
You help me with the fact that this group passed it 3 years ago with the idea we knew it was going to, somebody knew it was probably going to go to court. Did it not go on to city council for approval, or
no?
How come it's not C3 or C1 as we passed it last time?
In 2015, the Planning Commission at that time recommended approval pending that the applicant remove the commercial restriction off of the property through district court. And it did not go forward because that did not occur until just recently, like within the last couple of months. So we didn't realize that that window was going to be approximately three years.
There's no way.
So it never did go on to the city commission.
There's no way our vote 3 years ago could.
No, and
still stand.
No. And the other reason is when we notify people within 300 feet, there's a high probability that somebody has bought and sold property.
Sure.
And if we went back to something in 2015, then they wouldn't have an opportunity to be here. Yes, sir.
State law also requires if more than 20% of the property is changed, you have to have a vote that requires a 75% on a member of more than 7 on the board. A total, if it has more than 7, 3/4 have to pass it as a supermajority.
Okay. Chris, could you back up to the other slide on how many disapproved it?
Oh.
We're not in favor.
This one?
Yeah, and I think Mr. Andrews said something about some of those properties the city owns. Do you know?
I think what he probably is referring to is this area here, commonly called the courts. And the city of Enid does own some of those along with the Nicholases. And if you recall, we had our fire station right here that just recently was demolished. So I assume that's what he's talking about.
What would those be zoned for the most part?
Good question. Most of them are zone C3. This rectangle area right here, currently where the fire station was, have currently zoned SU, special use.
Has anybody calculated the percentage opposed to this just of the residential area and removed everything south of Garriott?
No. State statute says 50% of the land area within 300 feet. It does not distinguish different zoning types, which is what your question is. Streets are not calculated in that area. They're neutral.
Any more questions for Chris?
Could we do this contingent upon site plan approval?
No, that would be contract zoning, and that's not allowed in the state of Oklahoma.
Okay. All right.
Earlier, we were discussing the number of parking spaces. If you look at their existing location, they probably have, what, 20 to 30 their capacity. So at that point, you only need like 6.
How large is that thing? I mean, how big is the footprint?
Square footage.
The owner is in the room. Do you know Nick? Please come to the podium, Nick, please. And I can change that slide to where you can see your, excuse me.
Sure.
Go ahead. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Nick Jackson, and just want to thank y'all for letting me be here and for your service. I brought with me a Enid News and Eagle September 22nd, 2015. I didn't think, this has been with me for the whole fight. There's about 3 years of us trying to make something happen with this location to improve it. There's a lot to talk about, and I'm sure you all don't want to hear it all, so I'll try to keep it factual. I am a little surprised to see some opposition in the room. I do respect Mr. Keller and Mr. Andrew, and they did sit down with me when we went forward on trying to get this property rezoned. We went through a court. Because of the decision, it was a conditional approval. So they said if you can go get this approved in a district court, then we will uphold that it can be rezoned. And I think from there I would go to the city council. We did go through that. Mr. Keller and Mr. Andrew were represented by lawyers. We started out with the C3, which is the highest zoning that you could, on the commercial side that's not quite industrial. We brought it down to a C1 and a few other stipulations, and then we signed a settlement, and Dr. Keller and Mr. Andrew both signed that settlement through a 3-year court back and forth. And so when we presented in 2015, there is a site plan. It allows for about 24 parking spots. I'm sorry, I'm unprepared tonight. I did not bring any of those documents, but I can provide them. Mr. Hitt has seen it. It's been 3 years ago, but we did talk about eliminating the access from Garriott and then creating ingress and egress both on Arthur. And so, can I use the pointer?
Yes. Just press that.
Top button.
Okay, right there. Okay, great. Yes, so when looking at it, someone would come in here and they would, we looked at, the site plan was done by Chris Burdick of Envirotech. The ingress and egress would be wide enough for someone to come in here, come around the property this way, order, pick up, and then exit here. So they could either go, I don't know, I'm bad with direction. I guess this is north here, or they could exit south. Traffic was an issue at that time. We spoke about that, and the MAPC approved it at that time. When we started this, I sought out a lawyer and didn't know what I was doing. They said, how do you want to do it? And I just said, whatever's legitimate. I want to make sure we do this right. And they advised a class action lawsuit. So I got to sue like 230 people in the neighborhood, which was very interesting. It was not an aggressive suit, didn't have land or money involved on their part. It was just a call to court. They had the original notice. We did have 2 protesters then at that time, and they had a petition. And they were about, you know what, I'm not going to state a number. I know there were over 50. A lot of them were not homeowners, but I went back to every door there or met with a few, and I got all but between 5, let's say 5 and 8, let's just call it 8 people to re-sign that petition. And we also sent notice to the neighborhood through certified mail twice. One was in the beginning, and then the next one was, well, it would have been right before, maybe a month before the court hearing and the settlement. And we went to Guarantee Abstract and got a new list of people, so everyone in the neighborhood knew exactly what was going on. We had the settlement signed. When we had the district court hearing, there were no opposers. So nobody showed up in the neighborhood, including Mr. Andrew and Mr. Keller, to oppose. And so that's why I'm a little bit surprised that we're considering that tonight. So let's see. I don't know what else to share with you.
What's the square footage of the building?
Oh, I'm so sorry. The square footage of the building is approximately, I'm going to say 1,400. It's just under 1,400 square feet.
I wish we had the fire marshal here to discuss occupancy loads.
Now, in this particular building and the concept here, we believe that we will have people walking in, hopefully from the neighborhood, but a large amount will be drive-through. One thing the city will benefit from this is the easement on this property for the future expansion. So when we looked at the site plan, they said, this looks good to us, but you're going to have to give us this easement for the future so that we can come back on the property for expansion. The other thing is here, in this addition, there are about 230 properties. Before, there's a commercially zoned spot back in the neighborhood. It's like a workout facility. Before Mr. Keller and Mr. Andrew moved into the neighborhood, there was already commercial zoning along Garriott, and after, there was new commercial zoning along Garriott. The problem, or what happened here, is I invited everybody to the conversation. So I wanted everyone to know, when I got the petition, in a class action lawsuit, you have to have people in the neighborhood representing the neighborhood. So the first person I went to is this person right here. His name is David Skates, because I knew if he wasn't on board, it's going to be tough. David he approved and has signed an approval for this rezoning. And then there were 3 other parties that were on the petition against, and I thought it's my job to make sure they understand what I'm trying to do and what we are trying to accomplish. So those people also changed their mind and were in favor, and the other person was someone who sought me out and said, hey, I'd like to be a part of this trial. One other, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
The other thing is, so Maggie is my wife, and we moved out of Enid, and I'm a little off tonight. We're moving back, and I was up till midnight last night in the rain, the cold, trying to get stuff over, out of the house for the closing and all that. But we're very excited to come back to Enid, and my family has the Dodge dealership, the Chrysler Jacksons of Enid, and my roots are here. I'm 2003 class president, so my wife was not as excited to come back initially, but she actually is really geared up and excited about this. We are excited to be back, but in the future of Enid, there are 23,000 people a day that drive by this location. And that is the highest traffic count in northwest Oklahoma. I mean, this from Cleveland to Buchanan, which it kind of, goes back a few to Johnson, and then there's like Lincoln and Buchanan. It is the highest traffic spot in our city. And so on a development side of things, all those people going through 412, we want to bring them in and get those tax dollars in. In the way of, in my opinion, and you know, we've got really deep into this, in the way of a life cycle of a neighborhood, if in the inner city, if people aren't attracted to be there, then they'll move farther and farther out of town, and the inner city properties get worse. What we have seen in this particular neighborhood, Hayes is the best street on the neighborhood, and that's where Mr. Andrew and Mr. Keller live. But there are a lot of houses in this neighborhood that are being dilapidated, and if we don't show something or give some incentive for people to come in, young people to come in and to renovate those properties, then the cycle of this neighborhood as an inner city, you know, it's kind of centralized, is kind of on a downward turn. So what's great about this property and the rezoning of it is, one, that we're not rezoning it C3. So it can't. What I found out was that some of the people who protested knocked on the doors and they said, hey, they're going to put in a bar over here, or it could be a strip joint. Do you want that to happen? They said, well, no way, and they signed it. Well, in a C1, you can't have it can't be a strip joint, you know, and the lot is not big enough for a McDonald's or I mean, you might, I don't know, you know, I don't know if a tire shop is available to put in a C1, but that's why we reduced it. But it's just such a small property here.
Chris, I got a question. Hopefully you can help me out because I can't do the math in my head. You said a parking spot per 4 seats? Is that
One
what?
per 4.
One
per 4 seats.
What does that translate into square footage wise?
As far as the house?
Yeah, I mean, like, we have a 1,400 square foot structure. I mean, how many 4-chair tables can we put in there?
And that's impossible to tell here. He could do a seating arrangement. That's very common in the restaurant. But no, I have no way to tell you how many chairs that would be.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I had a question. What kind of hours of operation are you going to have next to this residential?
Well, at our facility now, we open early, so people coming to work and wanting to get there. So we'll be open early, 6 a.m. We did introduce gelato, which is like a high-end Italian-made ice cream, and people usually eat ice cream later in the day, and so we'll probably close around 8 o'clock.
You mentioned your interest in putting in a drive-through. According to your business plan, how many cars are you expected to come through the business per day?
It's 1.2% of the traffic count is what we need to basically stay alive there. So it's 23,300 is the traffic count. So what is that, 230? 250?
76, and that's applied to 23,000. So 300 cars?
200 to 300, yeah.
276 a day.
That's how many,
Remember,
we
50% of that would be in the morning hours.
I didn't this deep.
We didn't get into the traffic concerns as I remember. It was more about the developing across the road. That whole thing's fixing to, that was kind of the conversation.
Okay, guys, if we don't have any other questions for Nick or any other for Chris, I'm going to call for a motion. Do I have a motion to approve, or do I have no motion and it will die for lack of a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll give you the second. I think I was an aye vote last time it come up.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve the zoning to C1. And if you would again, Carla, let's do it by the roll call.
Whitney? Marvin?
Nay?
Eddie? David?
Nay.
Cole?
I'm going to have to abstain.
Don?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
2 for, 3 against, 2 abstentions. That's
Okay, the motion to approve dies.
Correct, failed.
Yes.
It fails. Thank you. Now, but this doesn't happen very often, Chris, so help me out for just a second. Does this go on to the city council?
Yes. Your recommendation as a planning commission is to deny the rezoning.
Okay.
That's what will go forward to the city commission.
Okay. Thank
And
you,
they'll
Chris.
ultimately make the decision.
But they can, in fact, say we go against that and we approve it.
They'll make their decision on November 6th.
Okay, again, give me a second. Get reorganized here. We have 4 lot splits, and from what Chris told me, 3 of those are together, so I'll read the first one, and then Chris can give us the information on it. Consider a lot split tract 1A for Shauna Martin, located in the east 1/2 of the northwest quarter of Section 33, Township 23 North, Range 7 west of Indian Meridian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's okay with the Planning Commission, my presentation will address 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3. They're all together. This property is located outside the city limits of Enid, is within the 3-mile MAPC jurisdiction. The property that the owner has is there in the yellow box. They're seeking lot splits to approve track 1A, B, and C. This is zone general agricultural and per the county zoning ordinance. The minimum lot area for each lot is 5 acres. All 3 of these have 5+ acres. And there is the individual surveys of each. They have access to road, which is right here. I'll go back up one more. You can see that road better here, all the way into it. And the water system will be private well, and the sewage will be septic. Is there any questions for staff?
The corner you show that's the northeast section of that,
Up here?
yes. Is that currently used as drainage retention, or is that private property?
That's private property. That's a lot right there, Commissioner.
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll go on to the second one. Lot split 1B, located at the same location. Do you need for me to read the whole thing?
Please.
Okay. Consider a lot split 1B for Shauna Martin, located in the east 1/2 of the northwest quarter of Section 33, Township 23 North, Range 7 west of Indian Meridian. Chris has already read that. Do I have a motion or anything on the second one?
Motion to accept.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to accept the lot split as I just read. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, item 3 is to consider a lot split 1C for Shauna Martin, located in the east 1/2 of the northwest quarter of Section 33, Township 23 North, Range 7 west of the Indian Meridian.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve item number 3. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries. Item number 4 is to consider a lot split for, I give up.
I think that's an acronym. I would just say WHADP.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
That's not a misspelling.
No, that's the way
Okay,
it
thank
is.
you. We'll call it what, WADP, or WHADP Properties LLC, located at 209 North 2nd, described as lots 17, 18, 19, 20, and 20, Block 29, Jonesville Edition. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the property right here, the yellow box. This is the lot split right here. This would be Randolph, and this is 2nd Street. So when we look at lot splits, we want to make sure that the newly created lot, which will be here, it's being separated from the whole, it does have access to Randolph. And the remnant that's left also has access to Randolph as well as 2nd Street. We also want to make sure both lots have access to water. They do. And we want to make sure both have access to sewer. They do. It's recommended for approval.
Any questions for Chris?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve item number 4. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries. Now, left over, we have 2 sidewalk variances, unfortunately, both of which we cannot vote on because we have to have 9 people. We only have 8. So as you probably have heard, Carla is trying to set up a special meeting where we can have at least 9 people. So at that point, we can't do those. I will consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.